to a roar. Alpine Stories.
To sit just out there and to sort of watch your family house burn with all its possessions is a horrible, gut-wrenching sort of experience. And to go down to the visitor centre at the front there where we first came in and to sort of see people who I thought had been perished was just a joyful, I couldn't describe what a sense of relief that was. To go into, eventually get back into Canberra and to sort of see Michelle and the kids, well, words just can't describe that feeling. So it was a day of mixed feelings, and I suppose looking back on it, what it gives you is a sense of perspective. As I say, it helps to put things into perspective that people and family are more important than possessions.
Brett McNamara often has to return to where his family home once stood in Tidbinbilla Nature Reserve, and he just can't shake a feeling that the house is still there each time he turns off the road and heads up to the site. As Regional Manager for Parks, Conservation and Land, which is part of the ACT government, Brett oversees the northern end of the Australian Alps, which includes Namadgi National Park and Tidbinbilla Nature Reserve. Despite the dramatic personal and professional experiences that Brett has been through, his focus is optimistic and very much on the future. But the subject of fire was definitely on Brett's mind when we met up. It ended up being Canberra's third hottest day on record, and Brett's a deputy fire captain who was on call during our recording.
Yeah, today's actually an incredible day. It's a total fire ban today. An extreme fire weather warning has been issued. We've got very, very strong winds coming from the northwest, and here it is at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's already around about 37 degrees. We've got around about winds at 30 k's coming from the northwest, and the humidity is just starting to drop now as well. So basically from here on in terms of the day, this is when it gets particularly nasty in terms of fire weather.
Fortunately, there were no fire incidents and we were able to get about without interruptions.
Tidbinbilla National Park and Namadgi National Park are at the northern end of the Australian Alps, and as you know, the Australian Alps is a chain of parks stretching from Victoria, Alpine National Park, through into New South Wales, Kosciuszko National Park, and then up here into the ACT. So to some extent, you're probably either at the start of the Australian Alps or at the end of the Australian Alps. This depends on your perspective, but living here in Canberra, we like to think this is actually the start of the Australian Alps.
So Brett, we're out the back now of the Namadgi Visitor Centre, and this is the beginning of something fairly profound, I believe.
Indeed, Richard. Yeah, this is the start of the Australian Alps walking track. Well, we'd like to think it's the start of the Australian Alps walking track. 650 kilometres later, you'll come out at a beautiful little town down in Victoria called Walhalla. And I think this is one of the joys or one of the beauties of the Alps walking track is that you can actually come along and actually do small sections of the Alps walking track, whether it's from the visitor centre here to the top of Mount Bimbri, the highest peak in the ACT, or even walking sections up to Mount Kosciuszko. The Alps walking track actually goes over Mount Kosciuszko. Number-wise, it's somewhere between sort of 15 to 20 odd people a year would complete the whole Alps in one hit. But obviously, as I say, there's many, many others that will complete sort of small sections of it. And for some people, it can be a life-changing journey, and that it's obviously quite a spiritual part of the world. You're literally walking on the rooftop of Australia. So some people even do it in winter. When we actually get a half-decent winter and snow, there have been people who actually skied sections of the Alps walking track.
With the temperature now around a scorching 40 degrees, we drove from the Namadgi Visitor Centre to Tidbinbilla Nature Reserve and up to the site of the McNamara's home.
It's rather interesting to think 4 years on that there still remains here of the house. We obviously cleared the house up. Where do I begin? I suppose by saying that living up at Bendora Dam, the house up there was also destroyed. Not that we were there, we'd obviously moved out and were living here, but we lost the family home where the kids grew up, I suppose, as well as the house here. But the only things that survived at both locations, here in Bendora, was a garage. So there's something about McNamara's and their association with their garages. And like most people, what you have in a garage, you have a lot of crap. Things that are broken, the old busted fan, the old busted ironing board or whatever it might be, or in our case, a lawnmower. survived at both locations, the garage. And the reason for that, Richard, is that there's no windows. There's nothing there where it can actually break and therefore the fire embers can actually get in and therefore burn. It's about moving on too, and I suppose, and while I'm happy to sort of talk about what our experiences are, because I think it's important to see that, to my mind, life is like a series of chapters. You close one chapter and you sort of move on. And that's particularly important for the kids too. Jordan and Gemma have adapted quite remarkably to their new life in town, and they probably adapt a lot quicker than Michelle and I did in terms of our adjustment. And that, I suppose, goes to the heart of how flexible and adaptable kids are. But young Jordan, I can remember after the fires, talked about how that in some extent it didn't really matter, Dad, that the fires came through and that we lost everything, the house and all our possessions, because we still had each other as a family. It was actually probably a wine glass. But yes, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, as they say. We'll return back.
So, Brett, we've talked a lot about the past and things that have happened, things that haven't been so good, but there are definitely some positives in the future.
Look, very much so. As we've said a number of times, Richard, to my extent, to my mind, life is all about chapters. We're now sort of moving on to a next chapter, and professionally here at Tidbinbilla Nature Reserve, I'm really excited about the future. We've spent the last 3 or 4 years planning, conceptualising, thinking about what are we going to do with Tidbinbilla? What are we going to make Tidbinbilla special? Why do people want to talk about Tidbinbilla Nature Reserve in years to come? So here at the moment, we're standing just outside of the wetlands enclosure, which is about to undergo a fairly major redevelopment of the next 12 months or so. And it'll have everything from sort of boardwalk type of experiences to an area where you can actually sort of walk down into the wetland and be at eye level, stand at eye level in a nice dry environment and actually sort of see the wetland floating past you. As I say, given the experiences that I've had here personally and professionally, I'd like to sort of think that as a result of the fires, that some good will come out of it, and the good, if you like, will be the rebirthing of Tidbinbilla Nature Reserve in terms of its experience for the visitor.
Not just the rebirthing of Brett McNamara.
No, exactly. No. It's as they say, it's holistic. Sort of goes hand in hand. And as I keep saying, professionally and personally, I guess I've invested a lot of time and effort into these areas. It becomes part of your blood. You don't become a ranger and sort of get involved with land management to make a lot of money. That's not what it's all about. It's the passion, it's the enthusiasm we had for the environment, and I suppose about sort of leaving the environment that we are fortunate enough to manage in better state, if you like, for future generations. And that sounds quite incredible given what's happened around here, but that's what life's all about, particularly the natural processes. You can learn a lot from Mother Nature in terms of how she responds to what we would see as being devastating impacts. Fire isn't really. Mother Nature would see fire as part of the landscape building. I guess we're fortunate enough that we sort of stand witness to a lot of those events at this point in time. And as I say, with a little bit of finessing around the edges with developments such as this, we can provide an environment that people will enjoy for generations to come.